Welcome everyone to this presentation about NetPoint. In this presentation, we'll cover how to make NetPoint and P6 work together. Let's start on with the agenda. We will kind of take a bird's eye view of how the two tools, NetPoint and P6, differ. And we will then discuss certain common scenarios in which people typically import and export information between the tools. They share the information between the tools. A little bit about me. I've been working with PMA for the last 8 years, developing and improving the NetPoint, NetRisk, and Schedule MD tools, which our users like, and hope you get more information from this presentation, which will help you improve your work processes. So let's get into the details. As we already know, NetPoint works on an innovative algorithm called graphical path method, which is different from what P6 and the other tools use. The major difference between GPM and CPM being GPM relies on planned dates instead of the early and late dates like CPM. So that brings a very major difference when you're exchanging information. If you have activities on planned dates in NetPoint, when you transfer over that information into P6, that information gets lost as P6 as soon as you schedule the project, the dates will shift to their early dates. So one thing you would want to probably do when you want to transfer a schedule which has planned dates is constrain your activities to those dates before you export the schedule out to P6. One good way to do that in NetPoint would be to use to filter for activities which have a positive drift, and you can then constrain those activities with the positive drift to basically limit any movement in your schedule once you export it out into P6. Another important distinction between NetPoint and P6 is NetPoint uses time-scaled LDM networks, whereas CPM uses Gantt charts, or P6 uses Gantt charts. So P6, with its use of Gantt charts, basically allows one activity per grid, whereas NetPoint can allow multiple activities to reside on a single horizontal grid. What that allows is you can place similar work together so that you can better display your workflow on the canvas. However, if you're bringing in a P6 schedule into NetPoint, that P6 file will not have any location information that is required by NetPoint to lay out your schedule in that manner. One approach that you could use after you have brought in the P6 file into NetPoint is use the inbuilt layout manager tool called Autograph in NetPoint, which will help you lay out your schedule in a much better manner with a single click. Another distinction being GPM or NetPoint provides you an object called benchmarks. P6 does not have any equivalent supported object, and so any benchmarks that are in your NetPoint schedule on an export to P6 get converted to a milestone with a must start on or a must finish on constraint. Similar to that, there are many constraints in P6 which NetPoint does not support, and if you import a P6 schedule with any of those unsupported constraints into NetPoint, they're simply ignored. Other things that are ignored on the import into NetPoint from P6 are resources that might have been applied to LOEs or WBS summaries, any resource calendars, and basically WBS summary objects by themselves aren't supported in NetPoint. On the P6 side, P6 does not support multiple value code assignments. So if you have any multiple value code assignments in your NetPoint schedules, they are not exported out to the XCR file. Also, NetPoint supports delays and P6 does not, so those are converted to activities. Okay, moving on. So now we will kind of go into some of the scenarios which are commonly used in P6 NetPoint transfer. One potential approach you might be doing is trying to build a detailed schedule in P6. To do so, you could actually build your work fragments or level 1 and level 2 schedules in NetPoint and then transfer over that information into P6, where you thereafter add more detail to the schedule. The benefit of using NetPoint to build these level 1 or level 2 fragments is basically the ease and interactive nature of using the tool by itself, the ability to collaboratively plan the schedule along with other stakeholders, the intuitive display, and the ability to use planned dates. So once you are if you're building a detailed schedule in P6, and for that you will transfer over your NetPoint schedule. When building your NetPoint schedule, you need to be aware, not if you're using any planned dates, or if you're using any multiple assignment codes, if you're going to use any mixed resource assignments, since these, as we discussed earlier, are not really supported by P6. And how do they transfer over? We will discuss a little bit about that. Another scenario could be that you want to do a what-if scenario or what-if analysis on a smaller fragment from your detailed schedule in P6. To do so, you would basically import a schedule from P6, export it out from P6, and import it into NetPoint. You don't have to import the entire schedule. NetPoint does give you the ability to import a fragment from the entire project. And to do so, you can use the configuration window to kind of select which activities to bring into the project, into your NetPoint project. The ability to do what-if analysis is in NetPoint is aided by stakeholder input that you can get. You can do collaboratively plan things with them and have a real-time interaction with the tool to see how different scenarios affect your project. And it allows you a better interface to evaluate different alternatives. So again, when you have a detailed schedule in P6, you should be aware that if you're going to bring it into NetPoint, NetPoint does not really support any workday shifts. So if you're bringing in a schedule as a day schedule in NetPoint, it will end up having 24-hour workdays, and any workday shifts will be ignored on the import. NetPoint also does not support calendar exceptions, which is basically any non-working day which is converted to a workday. There are certain P6 constraints that NetPoint does not support, and those are simply ignored on the import. Similarly, with resource calendars, they are ignored on the import into NetPoint. Activities with 0 durations are again not supported by NetPoint, so they're converted to delays. and any WBS summary activities are also ignored. Any user-defined fields that you might have in your XCR are not imported into NetPoint and are not available in the tool. Another approach or another use case for transferring information between NetPoint and P6 is if you wanted to maintain the schedule in both tools, so you kind of do round trips. There are certain things to understand over here. The process on the first transfer is kind of different and has little differences, but thereafter, after the first round trip has been completed, the process becomes the same. So if the initial project that you start with starts in NetPoint and you transfer it over to P6, when the transfer happens, at that point, NetPoint does export out all its position information, which allows it to put it in a time-scaled LDM layout, is transferred to P6 and saved with the P6 XCR file. So once you have that P6 XCR file imported into your P6 database, thereafter, whenever the project exports, it exports with that location information, which allows you to bring it into NetPoint with all the layout information already there, thus not requiring you to use autograph or any manual layout of the process, of the project. You might have to do a little bit of touch-ups to kind of lay out any new activities that might have been added to lay those out. But overall, the existing objects which were existing before the project went into P6, they should be laid out as they were. However, if the initial project starts in P6 and you import it into NetPoint, at that point, NetPoint does not have any layout information for those objects, and therefore it is necessary for the user to either manually lay out the objects in the project or use the simple interface of autograph to lay out their schedule as they wish. Common reasons to do a round trip is you might want to do a what if analysis in NetPoint and then import back the changes or your selected alternative back into your P6 database. You want to update your P6 database with the selected alternative, or you might just want to do collaborative and interactive planning sessions and thereafter push the updates back into your P6 schedules from those sessions. You might also want to do progress updates for summary and reporting purposes, and for that you need a round trip. Another possibility is you want to do an import from P6 for summarization or reporting. When you're doing summarization and reporting, this is currently not directly supported because NetPoint currently does not provide you with any automated tools or processes to summarize an existing project. However, a possible workaround could be to use Excel as an intermediary between the transfer to kind of use it for summarization and reporting. You basically export out your information from P6 to an Excel sheet, and once you have the object summarized or the dates presented in the proper manner in the Excel sheet, you can then import that Excel sheet into NetPoint. To kind of simplify the process, you could just export out your WBS summary activities into the Excel file, filter for WBS summary activities and export those out to an Excel file, and then import those WBS summaries from Excel into NetPoint as activity objects, thus creating an automated summary for you in NetPoint. Okay, so now let's move over to the demo to see how the export to P6 works and the import from P6 into NetPoint works. Okay, so over here we have a NetPoint schedule already open. To export this out into P6, I'll go to the File menu, Import Export, Export to Primavera XER, and we get this configuration window. At the top, we have this field called P6 Project ID. This is the ID used in the P6 database to uniquely identify your project and can be used to update it. Once entered in NetPoint, this gets saved with the NetPoint file so that it's available on subsequent exports to P6. Over here, I've chosen it to be demo NPT to P6. You can pick any XER version. For now, I'm using a default of 7. Over here, you have the calendars option, and you have the option to export all the calendars in your NetPoint file to be exported as global calendars in P6. For now, I'm keeping them as project calendars. Then you have the ability to export out your codes in NetPoint as P6 activity codes. Otherwise, they stay at the project level. Then you can export out project resources. This particular schedule does not have any resources, but you can export out any resources that you might have in your NetPoint schedule. One thing to be aware of over here, like I mentioned before, P6 does not allow mixed assignments. So those need to be converted. Mixed assignments being on the same activity, you do not have the ability in P6 to assign certain resources on a duration basis, like per instance basis, versus certain resources that might be assigned on a per day basis. They have to be one or the other. So you have the option to convert that kind of assignments in NetPoint, or either only convert the mixed assignments to a per day or a per activity basis, or just decide to convert all the assignments in your NetPoint file on a per day or per activity basis. Also, as I mentioned before, NetPoint schedules are on a 24-hour calendar when chosen in a day unit. So when exporting out to P6, you do have the option to specify any shifts that you might want to set up. So you can, in this case, the default is 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. and 1 p.m. to 5 p.m., an 8-hour workday. However, one thing to remember over here is all of the calendars get exported with the same working hours. So we do not, NetPoint does not really create different working hours for different calendars. All of the calendars will get set with the same working hours in this case. You can also pick your own custom work periods if you want to by choosing the custom work periods option and adding different start and end times. But for now, I'll just pick the default scenario and click next. This gives you a basic information about what data is being exported out. Just click export and it will ask you for a file to save to. I'll save it to my documents. Now I can go into P6 and import the file. So in P6, I pick file, import, choose the XER option, click next, choose a project, click next, and I basically browse to that file that I just exported out and press open, next. Over here, since no other project in the P6 database matches this project ID, and particularly in this case, there is no other project in the P6 database, it does not give you a match option. and it gives you the ability to only create a new project. And I want to import it. Let's say I can pick any node in the EPS. For now, I'm just picking my EPS node itself. And I click next, next, and finish. So at this point, the import was successful. I can close out of here, can go look at my project, and all my activities still seem to be here. I can press F9 to schedule, and now I have my critical path and everything in P6. Now we will look at how to export out from P6 and import into NetPoint. It's a similar process. One good best practice to follow is, before exporting out a schedule, you should always schedule it. So we will just schedule it again. Then to export out, you choose the file menu, export. You choose to export it out as an XER format. The version that you want to export out matters a little bit, but not too much. Just don't pick anything earlier than 6.1 because NetPoint doesn't support that. For now, I'm keeping it at 18.8 or later. Click next, choose project, and click next. I'm right now only exporting out a single project, but over here, if there are multiple projects open, I can pick and choose which project to export. Click next. I'll pick a file from P6, save, and finish. So now the file has been exported out. I can now go into NetPoint. Let me open up a new schedule first. This is not necessary. Even if you, on the import from P6, NetPoint will automatically create a new file for you. So you don't necessarily have to create a new project, but just to make it clear that I was actually importing a new schedule, I did this. Over here again in the file menu, import, export, and import from Primavera P6. And I can pick this file that came from P6, open. And over here I get this configuration window where I only have one project, so I do not have the ability to pick and choose which project to import. I also have a list of all the activities in the project. And over here, just by unchecking certain activities, I can say which activities to import and which I should not. Another part of it is you can actually add in more columns to pick and choose what you want to see. And you can also filter out for objects or information that you wanted to bring in. Let's say you had design activities in your project, and all of those design activities had the word design in them. So I can type for design, and it shows me all those activities filtered in the list. This allows you to kind of selectively find out certain activities and maybe turn them off or on, whichever way you want to. But just filtering it doesn't limit out the other activities. It is just in this view. So it's not that if you filter it out using this, at this point, if I press import, it does not mean that only these two activities will be imported. Which activities are imported are still controlled by the checkboxes. And since the other activities are still checked, all of those will get imported. So at this point, I'm importing everything into my NetPoint schedule. So I just press import. And my schedule has come into NetPoint. Also, once the process is complete, I do get an import report. And this import report basically gives you information about any changes or information that is relevant for you on the import, any information change. For example, there was a calendar that already existed in NetPoint. And so on an import, the calendar was renamed, or it was imported as a different named calendar. As I mentioned before, you had certain milestones with mandatory start and finish constraints, so those got converted to benchmarks automatically. So in this case, these were the only kind of changes that were made. One thing to remember on the export, and I would recommend this, that you export this report out to Excel, because this is the only time you will see this report. Once you press finalize import, you will not be able to get back to this import report for the same file. You would basically have to import the P6 schedule again to see the import report again. For now, I'll just press finalize import. And over here, I have my new schedule that I just imported from P6. And as you can see, it got laid out in a pretty similar fashion as before. And that's because the schedule originated in NetPoint, and on its transfer to P6 did transfer over its location information, which on the round trip back into NetPoint came with all that information. And so NetPoint was able to lay it out in that manner. If you have any questions or comments about the presentation, please feel free to contact us through our website, and we will try to get back to you soon. Thank you.